Up next, we come back to France, and we are going to spend 30 minutes looking at trends within the venture capital space within the country. I'm very pleased to invite Stephanie Hospital of One Ragtime to chair the panel, and for her speakers to also join her on the stage.
Hello everybody, so we have 2 minutes waiting for Philippe. Philippe is there, wonderful. So, very happy to be here. First of all, bonjour. As we're going to speak about the French tech ecosystem, just reading the newspaper, today on Les Echos, we had some interesting figures, plus 20% increase of revenue for the French tech in 2022, plus 40,000 jobs created. We have really a vibrant ecosystem. We look at that and we can see that France this year's record also for the first semester, the most impressive number of fundraise. We had 8.6 billion raised in France. We had many fundraise above 100 million. We had exit. So we can be very optimistic. No? What do you think? So to debate on that, I'm surrounded by 4 tycoon of the tech in France, I would say. The tycoon, yes, they're here for many years, in the ecosystem. So we have Philippe. Maybe some word, Philippe, on the, it's no word to present you.
Well, I'm the youngest of the crowd. And I've been 13 years in California and 20 years back in France. And I would agree, France is a great ecosystem as long as you are a pathological optimist, which I am.
So then we have Boris. So we said men first, because women are in majority here.
So I should have said maybe I'm the CEO of Truffle Capital, and we invest in disruptive biomedtech companies.
So Boris?
So on our side, we are C4 Ventures. We're a European fund. Actually, we were initially based in London, and we moved to Paris a few years ago. Initially, we have a really international portfolio, and increasingly we look at France. We think it's a long-term trend that the French ecosystem is really booming and is really starting to mature, and now is the good time to be there.
So then we have, Pauline. Let's, yes.
So we at Elia have been long-lasting French promoters of how tech can differentiate in Europe. Founded by engineers, 1 PhD in math, so promoting how strong we can be in creating value at early stage and trying to help this company grow. At Elia, we are early stage backers of tech, mostly digital, but not only, life sciences company too, and happy to give optimism to the crowd too.
And then maybe we will start with the first hope. So Catherine, and why?
Just a few words about Carista. So I'm Catherine Boulle, I'm a managing partner at Carista. And we are investing in French and then now European companies for 20 years. So I'm not so young too. Mainly in digital tech, deep tech and healthcare for sure. And we just launched 1 year ago a fund dedicated to space tech. So probably it could be one of our topics today.
Yeah, quite space tech. Ooh. So maybe I will ask my first question for Philippe. So Philippe, you've been 20 years ago in Silicon Valley. Do you think that France is now the new Silicon Valley?
Well, let's be realistic. While France has made a lot of progress, Silicon Valley is still moving forward fast. So if you look at the level of investments, certainly France and all European countries remain behind. For the early stage and VC funds, it's fine to raise 50, 100 million euros in France is very doable. When you grow companies, then it becomes a little tougher. So in our past, we've had to sell companies like Symetis, 400 million to Boston Scientific, Vexim, 200 million to Stryker, and others. And if we had had in France funds who could put investment in listed companies of 50 million each fund, then we would have kept these companies alive to go to the next stage of broad commercialization. So is it changing? It's improving a little bit. But to give you an example, we raised 2 weeks ago 50 million euros for Abivax, which is in phase 3 trial for ulcerative colitis drug, which is going to be with Crohn's and RA, $90 billion market. And most of the investors were from the US, specialized funds. We had us and others from Europe, but unfortunately this trend is continuing. Late-stage companies in biomed tech often needs US investors. So the financial savings in Europe are huge, in France are huge, and unfortunately a lot of the asset managers in France, insurance companies, still shy away from disruptive companies. So I hope in this crowd you will invest more in companies which make the future, which change the life of patients, which revolutionize medicine, so that we don't have in 20 years again the US dominating and maybe China the healthcare market.
Yeah, I mean, clearly we can see that the ecosystem has progressed a lot, and hopefully thanks also to the BPI and all the massive injection of cash we had in the economy. But when we go beyond capital, Pauline, what makes us unique in France?
I think this is something people know, but we are a land of talent in tech and engineering. We don't want to stare at a debate about the quality of education in France, but the reality is that amongst the elites and the people that are going to build the future, we have thousands of talents each year that could become professor, and something that has changed is that part of those talents turn to entrepreneurship. A couple of years ago, when we started to invest in deep tech, some of the questions we were asked most often was, how do you deal with those guys? Because business is something dirty to them. And we now face people that, knows about business models, how you grow, how you structure. And so out of those talents and this proprietary intellectual property, we can create some value. So I think this is something quite unique to France when we compare to other geographies, and that we need to be proud of and to promote.
Well, maybe Boris, you can add your perspective, as you've been investing all over the world, and especially also in Israel. Israel used to be the startup nation.
Exactly. Now, what we've seen, along the years, we've seen raw talent in the early days in France, especially on the technical side, technical skills, which progressively matured into management, marketing, and essentially being able to be an entrepreneur and build a successful company. So we've seen that take shape over the last 10 years. We've seen like few generations of entrepreneurs being role models that inspired the second generation. And I think today we're like a third generation of people who sometimes are second-time founders or even third-time founders, and they inspire others to do so. So it's like a demultiplying effect of this talent rise to entrepreneurship. So we've seen that very, very clearly, and we believe this is like the core fundamental long trend, which is not going to stop despite the cycles that we've been witnessing.
And Catherine, you've been with Carista always ahead of everybody, investing early in deep tech, health tech, then now space tech. Why this move for space tech?
So always, I don't know, but sometimes, yeah. For example, we launched a digital health fund 4 years ago. At this moment, nobody were totally sure that digital health is real in Europe. For sure, in the US, it was. And you had some discussion with LPs. Are you sure the timing is okay? What are the business models? So for the business models, the question is still there. But timing, I think today everybody is okay to say yes. It's now, and we need to deep dive that and to see what we can do with all these data. So we've done that a few years ago. And for the space tech, so why? Good question. It's something approximate. For example, in the US, there's digital health for 10 to 50 years, and space tech for probably 10 years, and we are just asking here the question about is it real? Is the European companies can have a role in this market, etc. So yes, for sure, yes, we have, because of the talent we had in France, but in Europe too, and we launched this fund with the French Space Agency, which is the biggest one in Europe. So there's a lot of competence and IP and etc. and knowledge around that. So for sure, we are pretty convinced that we had something to do. It's not easy because we need to convince that there's a market in Europe, there's opportunities and there's exits. There will be, probably. But we did already that with the digital health, and now you see the market is opening and improving and growing.
And when we compare France to the European ecosystem, and maybe I turn to Pauline, as Pauline is also, apart from being France Invest member, France Digital member, and the European Invest chairperson, I would say, no, co-chairperson of. So you have this perspective. So it's just for some insights about our association that we need extremely in the ecosystem to be bigger, by the way.
Join us.
Yes. What do you see, I mean, that make us very well positioned in the coming years to be the leading place for startup in Europe?
I don't know if we are going to lead, but at least we are going to be vocal. Something we mentioned preparing this panel is if you compare to US or China or other geographies, each of the European countries by nature have a domestic country that is not a market enough to address, to grow big and to become a unicorn. So our companies, and especially in France, because international capital came early, like in UK, like in Germany, we have companies that need to go abroad super quickly to grow. We cannot stay on the French market. It's not an investment thesis. And the reality is that also when you grow international, not on your domestic market by design, either you have a B2C go-to-market or a B2B go-to-market. And Europe, and especially France, has been very good in the early success stories we had in the past, such as Business Object, Criteo 10 years ago, to have solid record on B2B scale-ups. And something interesting that come out from the data at Invest Europe or France Invest is that we are very good at cash optimization and ROI of cash in those models, specifically in France. All the success stories you hear out of Europe, and a lot of them in France too, are B2B models. And I think with the positioning of most funds we have in the ecosystem, we have quite a nice coverage of everything you can do in B2B verticals to grow big and international.
So looking at Philippe, why choose France? So it's Pascal, as you hear, I mean, I could not resist to do that. So why choose France today? We have among us many investors, many family offices. So why they should invest with us, on us?
First thing, at Truffle, we got €1 of non-dilutive financing for each euro of equity investment. That's much more than in the UK, much more in Germany, much more than in Switzerland. So you have research tax credit, young innovative enterprise, and then the competitive grants from BPI, CGI, and so on. And for example, for 10 of our companies, we got €200 million of competitive grants on top of research tax credit. Of course, it's not easy to get, it's competitive, but if you have daring project and companies, you can have a lot of non-dilutive financing, which means that you can grow companies which are truly disruptive with good return on investment on your equity. Number two, if you are Silicon Valley versus France, well, if you take Marseille or Nice, you have, as Bruno Le Maire said when he came to visit our company, Carenx, you have sea, science, and sun. He hesitated on the second word. But that's very attractive. You know, when scientists and engineers and their families say, where do I want to spend time? I'm not sure they'll choose Plateau de Saclay. I'm not sure they will choose an area where the families say, I don't want to live there. They will choose between Stanford, Boston, Princeton, and maybe Nice, Marseille, and so on. So that's very important to attract talents. You know, where will the family want to live with schools, good high schools, and good environment? So with Carox Medical, which is the future world leader of autonomous robotic in surgery, engineers watch the Mediterranean Sea, you know, are within Nice. So that's very important on top of cash. But I'd like to add, you know, France and other European countries have to bet to the next fields. So you talked about aerospace, but I'll mention two. So France is very good in aerospatial technologies. And to develop autonomous robots for surgery, you need a lot of artificial intelligence, technology coming out of space, which is why we formed Carmat Artificial Heart with Airbus a number of years ago, which will be the world leader in artificial hearts. So that's one of the bets. The other bet, I think Europe and France can have an edge, is circular economy and recycling. So 11 years ago, we decided to bring biotech into recycling of plastic when no one was talking about that. And today, Carbios, which some of you are shareholders of, is on the verge of becoming world leader and building 5, 10, 50 plants in Europe and in the US to have a technology which will recycle 15 times, 20 times the bottle of plastic. And Europe should bet on that because the US is not in advance on waste management, on circular economy as compared to Europe.
None of you is mentioning the large corporation. I mean, how do you see? Do you think it's maybe Boris? It's an advantage for us going forward because we have champion. I mean, Veolia, Total, CMA, CGM.
Well, let me ask you, how much these companies are spending in R&D? Remind me.
Well, I don't know.
Less than 1% in R&D as compared to the top line. So this is ridiculous, and this is why a lot of problems of the planet today are not solved, because science and R&D can solve a lot of problems. Pharma companies spend 15%, Veolia, Suez, Total, and so on, 0.5 to 1%.
Yeah, I'm sure they will do more. I mean, for sure. And
for the same reason, actually, they work with the startups today. So we have an ecosystem in France where you have a lot more collaboration, I would say, between the corporates and this economic tissue of startups. We've seen in the events that major tech events that we have in France, like Vivatech, but more increasingly, corporate venture is one way to do it, but it's not the best way to do it.
Contract.
Exactly, and that's really coming aboard. And there was initially a defiance between these two worlds, which are now much more coming together.
Catherine, you've been on the ecosystem for many years. I mean, we had years of, euphoria. Now it seems to be cooling down everywhere in the world, but not yet in France. Are we lagging, or are we just, ahead of the curve?
My feeling is that it will come in France too, for sure. It's already a little bit slowing down, and probably we can see already that. I don't know if my colleagues are agree about the valuation of the companies. I'm betting that end of this year and next year will be probably a little bit less, we can say, bullish, but we'll see. My question to you and to the room is, will it be a stop or just a slowing down? I don't know. There's a lot of money on the market today in France and Europe. There's a lot of companies that, VC firms that have raised funds, so they need to deploy for sure. So probably more cautiously, and it's not so bad perhaps. But we'll see. I don't know. I think we're not a part of the world.
Can I be the contrarian there?
Yes, please.
It has started. It is cooling down. We are not waiting for it. We are clearly living it. I think what we are going through is something that will sort up and down the really good and the discretionary, not to say bad companies. Yesterday, everybody got funded. The thing you tried to optimize was the amount you raised and your dilution, but you found money. I think the good news for the ecosystem now is that the real champions are going to be clear players, and some companies that will get funded with different means, different amount of cash, different ambition too, will get funded too. And the ones probably that were a bit over sexy a couple of weeks ago are not going to make it, and this is our job to support them in some of those moments too. But what we tell the LPs and the rest of our partners is that the digital transformation, technology that builds the future in a decade is something that is a long-term trend. It started in COVID. I think everybody realized in big corporations that you cannot escape digitalization, and this is a long-term trend. And the terms and valuation are one of the aspects of what we are doing, and so we adapt, but the trend is there. So regardless of the multiples of ARR, we are doing the deals in the next 12 months.
Yeah, I mean, clearly we will see that. And by the way, if we have a message for all of you if you have a large corporation, do contracts with your startups. We need that. If we want to be competitive in the next years, we need to have this money coming also from the customers, not only from the VC. So Philippe, which advice are you giving today to your entrepreneurs? Slow down, accelerate, be aggressive in your development?
Speed up.
Speed up, I love that.
But the current environment creates a lot of opportunities. So with our new fund, Meteor, for instance, we are going to invest and merge sometimes two companies together. Too many biotech companies, medtech companies, tech companies in Europe are too small. One product companies, which, if the product is late or fail, it's the end of the company. So we like to start companies with one technology product, then merge 2 or 3 companies and make a bigger company, so that if only one product succeeds, the company succeeds, and 1 or 2 product fails, it does not matter. So we see a lot of opportunities doing that, and Meteor will be very active there. So, for those of us who have been around for a few years, this cycle seems a little tough, but there were other cycles in the last 30 years. And the people who won were not those who went to bed under the carpet. They said, let's speed up, let's invest, and let's do creative things.
So let's be aggressive. I mean, Boris, how do you see that applying to because we speak a lot about the French ecosystem giving also a lot of financial means, and thanks for the states and the BPI, but can we build champions that are not living in a tough moment with no money? I mean,
we can build champions at the European scale. And I think if you come back full circle to what we started to say about Europe, I think the real opportunity here is that I think there will be 3 main opportunities. The first one is consolidation, and you start to address that. But I think consolidation will be at the European level, giving us a unique opportunity to create companies at scale that can defy on a global basis. That's like a long-term trend. This is like a short window opportunity to start doing this. That's number one. I would say number two, that's more short-term. It's more liquidity. I mean, the main thing that was said of the French tech scene or the tech scene in general is that it's good to invest. Valuations are skyrocketing, but what about exits? Well, I think there will be some liquidity now because of this consolidation, but also because of other factors coming at a discount, sure, but after all, with this valuation, it's okay to do this. Mm. And the third one, opportunity, I think it's we start to mention about the future sectors. Now is the time to build the champions in the sectors, the key sectors that we know are key for the future. And having this type of crisis, you want to refocus on what really matters for the long term. And I think that's what we covered a bit earlier.
Catherine, is France a land of exit? How aren't we going to see the large American or looking at France because it's super cheap with the US euro rate? I mean,
a land of exit, you mean for the companies to be?
Of course.
In fact, it's a good question. for my main sector, which is healthcare, probably it's not the best place, to be honest, because there's not a lot of companies able to buy startups at a correct price, and because there's not a lot of French stakeholder, in fact. So, but there's could happen for sure. Europe could be, and we are all looking at the US for sure for exits first, because there's pretty much money. But it's a very hot topic, because we would like to have more partners, local partners, able to support. Philippe mentioned about big, large fund able to support before the buyout, and we are lack of that. And probably about exit is a little bit the same thing.
And maybe for Pauline, we've seen a lot of private equity funds, and some of the largest are Euraseo, TKO, and of this world. I mean, do you think it's a good exit strategy for startups, for build-ups?
This is something that we experienced a lot in the past 18 months. Usually we had two exit tracks, either trade sale to a corporate or IPO in some cases. And we made around 10 exits since the beginning of the year at the firm, and half of them at least were PE-backed companies. And the reality today is that since the market is going down, you sometimes may be better off buying €1 of revenue with a build-up approach, rather than raising money to build €1 with much more dilutive terms. So the companies that are cash rich at the moment and have the opportunity and also the ability, because it's difficult. You don't wake up one morning saying, okay, I'm going to build up companies. This is a specific know-how. It's difficult. Sometimes it fails. You need to implement synergies. It's not something you decide. But this is something that has become another real way of exiting. And sometimes you just don't want to, and you also have the opportunity to roll out. So it's another opportunity to GP to deal with their own lines differently on the cap table sometimes. Because some want to stay, some want to go until the end of the story. So it's also a bit of haute couture that we can play, and that is pleasant.
Maybe we will finish with a word describing a word describing the French ecosystem. Maybe we start with who wants to be first. A word, single word. Boris?
Definitely booming.
Booming. Pauline?
Repeating. We have some repeat now.
Catherine?
In fact, not so easy. Only one word.
One word.
Wow. I would say juicy, because there's a lot of money, and again, grants and tax credit, research tax credit is just a sort of hidden for entrepreneurs.
Philippe?
Vibrant.
And I will conclude with choose France.
Merci Stéphanie.